And coming up on this week's Green Signals, train strikes, the fight we all thought was over, just became more heated than ever. We speak to ASLEF's Mick Whelan to understand what's gone wrong now. Is it time to close the Island line? We visit the Isle of Wight railway to find out. And there's an HS2 construction update as bridges and viaducts move into place. So welcome to Green Signals number 47 from Lincolnshire, where I'm in person with
Richard Bowker here in Lincolnshire.
It's the first time we've done a show actually together since number 1. And you've moved house since then. You're in Derby.
It's nearly a year. It's quite remarkable, isn't it? So there we go. We've got a nice location. We've got your pub behind us, and absolutely marvellous. So more on why we're doing it here a little bit later on.
Indeed. Keep them guessing. So it's good to be in person. There you go, Richard.
Absolutely. It is very good to be in person. We have got a serious number of super thanks this week.
We absolutely have, so we'll go through them at a fair old clip, if that's all right, because we do determine to say thank you to everyone. The bumper list is Roy Tate, Adrian Gould, Tim Ailif Robson, Mike Knowles, Robert Walsh, Simon Moppet, Andy Walker, Richard Wenner, Sean Harris, John Kirkman, Drew's Railway World, Mark Woods, Rob Jones, Mark Beresford Smith, Chris Exley, the Independent Brig Line Rail Group are always there. Well done them. Alan Kirkman, Simon Pilkington, a former interviewee as I recall, and I'm going to say this very carefully, Norfolk and Good.
I'm glad you were very careful with that. No, we really appreciate everybody leaving us super thanks, so thank you. I suspect one of the reasons why the bumper list and why you had to read that out was because last week we published our after hours raw and uncut
for the first time
episode, right? Which actually proved to be incredibly popular. There was one person said, "I hate this," or "I can't stand this."
Can't stand this one person.
There was about 850 other people who said they loved it. So we're going to be doing more of them. It's something we're going to be doing as part of our membership program and as a sort of a special treat, which is actually why we're filming from Nigel's pub. Because we just recorded a short video for the membership program.
We have. There were just 2 of those. I mean, all the comments were good, apart from "I can't stand this," and that amused us anyway, didn't it? But there were 2 that really stuck in my mind. The one was the very first one, and the chap said, "I absolutely love that. It was like I was sat in the room with you."
Yeah.
Bullseye. That's exactly what we wanted. And somebody later on who said the 3 of us were comedy gold. I quite like that.
Yeah, I think that was...
Maybe has a low bar of...
Well, anyway. There you go.
So we need a drum roll.
No, we don't.
Would you like me to? would you like me to do it? How about a fanfare?
No, please don't.
Okay.
Right, I'm going to move on then quickly. So, what it does mean, because we've recorded this video, it means the membership program has now gone live. We're all this show that we do every week. This is always going to remain free. The point of the membership program is so that we can do extra stuff, and there's extra benefits, and there's loads of them we're doing. We're not going to go through the list now. We need to get into the program, but you can go onto the website, you can go onto YouTube, and you can see what all the benefits are. However, just one little bit of detail. If you watch us on YouTube, which many people do,
it's really easy.
You will see a join button on our channel page, on our actual video page. If you're on Spotify, okay, you will have to head over to a thing called Patreon website to sign up there, and do sign up on the website, not on the Patreon app. Okay, do sign up on the website. Now, both options offer pretty much the same benefits. They are slightly different because of the way that YouTube works, the way that Patreon works. But if Patreon is probably best if you want both audio only and video content, whereas if you're just happy with the video content on YouTube, then that's probably best. Anyway, the links for both membership options are in the description box for the episode on whichever platform you're listening to. So if it's on YouTube, it's in the description below. If you're on Spotify, it's there as well, or you're on audio, it's there as well. do have a look, and please do sign up, because we've got some really cool stuff coming.
We have,
so.
and you only have to do it the once.
You only have to do it once, and then it's sorted. Yeah.
There was clearly a growing desire from people to support what we're doing, and this is a good way of making
Absolutely.
that real.
And we do have some really special
Yes,
offers as well coming as well.
we do.
We've been able to sort, and there's more of those to come, so that's great. We, by which I mean Steph, is going to be making a little how-to video for anyone that needs help setting up either on YouTube, which is really easy actually, or on Patreon, which is a little bit more. Yeah, that will be you. Yeah. If that might just take us a few days to do. So if in the meantime you've got any issues, just send us an email to info@greensignals.org. Steph and I look at that. Nigel obviously doesn't, but Steph and I look at that, and then we can answer any questions to get your help out and help you out. So that's our membership program. It is now live. We're really excited. So
we absolutely are. And we'll be doing more raws and uncut, or raw and uncuts, whatever the plural is.
We've done it 1 week, and you've already forgotten what we called it. But never mind.
I haven't, because I came up with the after hours name.
All right. Okay. All right. We've also had some more listeners from across the globe.
Yay!
So quick shout out to them. Steve Millington from Portland on the southwest coast of Victoria, Australia. Mike from, oh heck,
Go on.
Aotearoa in New Zealand. Mike, if I've got that wrong, please say. Jeffrey Brown in South Africa. Jakob Holtzwarth, who was watching last week's show from Germany on a train between Hamburg and Copenhagen. That's brilliant. Bob Howard from Sydney in Australia, and Thomas Steff, who's a German train driver, also sent us his greetings. This is my favourite one, though. Hugh Colton, who said he was watching whilst busy captaining the New Zealand team at the World Gliding Championships in Uvalde in Texas. I mean, I suspect that says something about how gripping the World Gliding Championships might be. I don't know.
Or what the captain's required to do at any one.
And I'm sure it's a very, very important role.
Well,
but anyway, so thanks you. That was a terrific.
It's very flattering that we were more important.
Indeed.
There we go.
Indeed. There you go.
Look, we'll have to update. Oh, here we go. Steph will have to update
the map
with all the droppers on it.
Yeah. There'll be more droppers than maps soon. But anyway,
I'm looking forward to the day we get one from some research depot in Antarctica.
Are you?
That'd be a really good one.
Good.
That'd be very cool. Anyway, on to a really big and very serious story this week. We had planned to bring you our video of Richard's jollies.
They're not.
They are.
They're not jollies. Anyway, keep going.
On the GBRF train to Fort William for the aluminium smelter, and also Network Rail's new measurement train. But something came up this week that means they're going to have to move to next week now. Just when everybody seized a sigh of relief that train strikes were coming to an end because a deal had been done with ASLEF after 2 years, not 24 hours later, a whole swathe of new ASLEF strikes were announced specifically on LNER. This is just a bloody mess, isn't it, Richard?
Well, look, it is tricky. We're going to run the interview now with Mick, and then we'll chat about it afterwards, and hopefully there's some comments we're going to make. Mick is very forthright in this interview. I think it is important to say that, I mean, we've had lots of guests on Green Signals who've also expressed their opinions very clearly and very directly, and Mick has done the same. I think it's important to say that all our guests, they're their opinions, they're not necessarily ours, and they're not ours, but have a look at the video, listen to what he's got to say, and then we'll have a chat about it.
Indeed we will.
Well, absolutely delighted to welcome Mick Whelan, General Secretary of ASLEF to Green Signals. Mick, thank you so much. You're very welcome. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Great to be here again.
Hey, what a week. Some big changes. I mean, let's start off with the big pay deal. You must be delighted with what's been achieved in the last week.
I am. It shows if people are willing to talk to you, where you can get to. And I'd just like to refresh people's memories, because there's been an awful lot of misrepresentation, particularly on the political side, outside of the industry, what actually is being done. So we've been through a period of time whereby we hadn't had a pay rise for most people for 5 years. For 2 of those years, we didn't seek a pay rise, and we didn't get one for those 2 years, 2 years of COVID. Then the next 2 years were when inflation went totally mad because of Ukraine and energy prices and elsewhere. And one of those years, RPI was 13.8. and the year after it aggregated 8.9. And those are the 2 years we were disputing, because the people that we'd worked for 23 years to sign deals with the then government that only the government could authorise a pay rise, and we were in a mad world of we want to rip up every term and condition you get for a 25% pay cut, and then people just stopped talking to us for the best part of 12 months.
Can I just ask you about that, the number of pay years? Because I must admit, I'm sort of a bit confused between 4 or 5. Which pay years are we talking about? Was it, because there was a deal done for 1920, so are we talking about 2021, 21, 22?
We're talking 22 and 23 in essence are the two years of the dispute. So for the first year, we got 5% when inflation was running at 13.8. For the second year, we got 4.75% when inflation was running at 8.9 on average. And because we're virtually a third of the way through this year, we've done a deal for this year to get pay out the way of 4.5%. If you aggregate the RPI over the whole period of time, we put a dent in the cost of living, which is all we sought to do. We haven't doubled inflation, as some people have claimed we have.
Right. So but that's really clear. So this year's pay, we're actually a third of the way into it. You've effectively settled that as well.
Yeah. So if the members agree, of course. I mean, it's great for me to say that we've done a deal, but understood. It's now out to a referendum. The people that have been involved in the longest rail dispute in history are now got to have their say in whether they believe it's worthwhile or not. We're hoping it'll go through. And then we're hoping go on to do normal business going forward.
Well, on that, actually, before we just get into that, just in terms of cost, so it's been reported that this is £100 million, but presumably because we've got final salary pension schemes, there will be a cost to the pension fund as well, which will have to. Have you got any idea how much the pension cost of this is?
Well, if we're going to contextualise it first, I think the former rail minister, over 6 months before this, had estimated when he spoke to the Transport Select Committee that the strikes cost 1.6 billion. So 100 million in the context of that, and when we estimate the overall cost of the industry is over 2 billion, is nothing. And of course, as you know, when we did contracting out and more recently other things, we capped pensions at RPI plus a quarter. And of course, again, to qualify even further, in most pensionable years, you have to be on that scale of salary for a year before it goes on your pension. So the costs are cut somewhat limited by where we are and the amount of time that you've actually be on that salary scale for it to apply.
Okay. I mean, there was quite a few drivers did have multi-year deals that were agreed just before the dispute began, isn't it? So I suppose they, in a sense, have had a bit of a double benefit. Well, you might not call it a double benefit, but the multi-year deal folks have actually got that and this increase. Is that right?
They only get it for the years that they didn't have a deal for. So those that have been full 5 years waiting for a pay deal get the benefit of 3 years involved. Those that were in multi-year deals only get it for the period of time outside of when they didn't have a deal.
That's very helpful. Thank you for the clarity. One thing that I thought was interesting in the press release that you put out, Mick, it said, and forgive me, I'm just going to read this because I don't want to misquote you. You said, a Tory government that set out to destroy us, first by refusing to meet us, then by insisting the companies could only offer us 2%, then 4%, but with a land grab for all the terms and conditions we've spent 144 years negotiating with productivity and sweat. I mean, that last sentence, was that just for a bit of sort of dramatic effect, really? Because, I mean, you're not really saying that a term and condition that was in place 144 years ago is relevant now, or we? I wasn't quite sure.
I wouldn't say it was relevant, but basically, when we spoke before, I spoke to you about the two non-deals that had gone out there. The first one, which was, if you give up every agreement you've ever made nationally and locally, we'll give you a 25% pay cut. One that we hadn't seen, one we hadn't negotiated, and one they put out to us via the press, which again made resolving any dispute incredibly difficult. And then we subsequently had the deal where we sat down and spent a month removing the red lines. And the day we went for the offer, they put the red lines back in. So I actually wasn't understating it. I was just trying to give a flavour of our view of where we've been.
Okay. But one thing you've been really clear about on this, I mean, crystal clear, that this is a pay rise deal. This is not linked to anything. There's no sort of, there's no conditions. Obviously, purely pay rise. Have you given Louise Haigh any sort of confidence or commitment that she has bought a period of peace now? She's bought the peace, or is there a risk that when we come to do, because we're going to have to look at terms and conditions at some point, if only when we start doing aggregations to remove some of the fragmentation. How long have we really bought the piece for, Mick?
Well, I look at this that we couldn't get any realistically economic view of the opportunity cost to the previous government and the previous employers, because they couldn't tell us, other than that they wanted everything for nothing, what they wanted and what it was worth. And when you've got up to 3 sets of drivers in one company, because the constant fracturing and putting together the franchise map, as you know from the past, right, different things worth different things to different people in different companies is always a hard sell. So, but we've had the things also, it's all about Sundays. And I said, well, okay then. So the 14 companies involved, 12 have got Sundays in the working week or committed Sundays. So why is it all about Sundays? Again, nobody could answer the question. Nobody could explain to me about cutting sick pay in one company, how it was going to make the trains more resilient or run better. Nobody was talking to us about long-term investment. We're talking about the motorist and the railway falling into disrepute. And then I, like you, read the figures, and we know that footfall's back Monday to Friday, and it's actually increased at weekends, and we're back to pre-pandemic levels. Yet we still have lesser timetables and lesser capacity than we had before. And in the future, because of the industrial malice of what they've done to HS2, in my opinion, we're going to have less footfall going London to Birmingham than we currently have. And to get to either Manchester or Liverpool is going to take you 15 minutes longer, which we know the economic benefits of. So, again, I'm willing to listen to any argument. But what we have here is I'm extremely confident that we can do business with the people we're now talking to, just off my recent experience. So the government was elected on the 4th. The Secretary of State was appointed on the 5th. Lord Peter Hendy was appointed on the 9th, and we had our first meeting with them on the 10th. And then they put their own team in place to negotiate, not the RDG. And we've had 3 very quick meetings with them, and we've got a resolution. That shows what can be done if there's a willingness to find a way forward.
Okay. We'll come back to how industrial relations get managed in the future, because that's a very important point you just made there. But I just want to go back to these terms and conditions again, if we may. So I listened to your interview with Justin Webb on the Today programme last week. And he put it to you that there was some working practice, let's call that were difficult to justify in 24. And you were very robust and you said, name one. And he named the Sunday working point, which you've just done there. And again, you were pretty robust in your response. But there was an interesting piece in, and I use that phrase advisedly given the paper, in the Daily Mail on the 16th of August, where they listed some of the things which they claim are practices which still exist today. So this is the opportunity.
Shall we do them one by one?
Let's go through them one by one. So medical checks, a regulation in place since 1980 lets workers take paid time off for a medical check if they use a microwave on the job.
Untrue.
And that's untrue.
I've never come across it. I mean, I was the officer of a Virgin back in the day. I've been in the freight sector. I was officer of London to Midlands. At one time, I had 9NX companies. There is no national agreement that we can find on record in this building, because I like to double check these things, that we had any such arrangement. There may have been some obscure local agreement at one depot in the dim and distant past, but do you know any place where anybody's ever given somebody a day off walking past a microwave? It is arrant nonsense.
Okay, that is pretty clear. That's pretty definitive. Because, by the way, you can only say it's untrue if it's not true
to
anywhere.
My knowledge,
right?
It's totally untrue.
Right. Okay. Number 2, walking allowances. These dictate that staff must be given extra time on breaks to cover the process of strolling, their word, to and from their mess room and a train. For example, at Birmingham New Street, a worker's half-hour tea break actually lasts 40 minutes with 5 minutes for the journey there and back.
Right. You and I both know that at major stations, the management time the walking routes, right, for the timetablers, right, from the maximum point from the furthest platform to the booking on point. And the reason they do that is because some days we don't know what train the platform's going to be in because of disruption or whatever else. That is not an agreement with us. That is a stipulation so that the trains actually run and physically we can work to the timetable. So if you've got a station with 14 platforms and your meal break is on platform 1 and you get off a train on platform 14, you'll get the full entitlement. When you finish your meal break, your redirected train may still be on platform 14. But it is the robustness that everything we do, we must be the most equipped and timed people in the world because we work to a timetable. So from when you shut a train down, there's a time. When you walk to a point to do something, there is a time. The time to get back and the time that you have are so incredibly tight. I mean, and bearing in mind in the 21st century, we still have this thing where people work 5 or 6 hours and they get split breaks. So having got up at 1 o'clock in the morning to work at 3:20, you work 5.5 hours and get a bare 15-minute break. All of that 40 minutes, if it does exist, won't be the break. It will be the time it takes you to dispose of your train, to walk to the P&B point, to have your P&B, to get back to your train, to relieve that train, and to get it going again. It's hardly 40 minutes break, is it?
No, and I think your point is that even if there is walking time allowed in these things, that's not a trades union demand. That is in order to make the timetable and dispatch of trains work more effectively. Is that? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Truly, that's it. I mean, that's how it works everywhere. You know, nobody gives you more time they feel you're entitled to. And, you know, down the years, arguing about disposal and prep times is something that's been an industry thing. But, you know, the ability to get from A to B, carrying all your chattels and goods, because you have to take them with you, by the way.
Okay. Number 3, and this one's, well, I've just, hold on to your chair. Bizarrely, says the Mail, some staff are allowed to restart a break if a manager simply says hello, because any conversation with a boss counts as work.
Untrue. And context, shall we? So again, in this time when most of your breaks are taken at remote points and not where you work, and when you have rather limited breaks, if you've got a bare 15 minutes in a 10.5-hour diagram, and somebody takes 8 minutes to talk to you about a problem or asking you for a report, then you've had no break at all. And also, you do know the times when, if somebody's going to talk to you about a disciplinary or an emotive issue, you don't do that to safety critical staff, where it might affect their focus when they go back out on the track. So I think this is someone wildly exaggerating and taking these things out of context.
But if you say hello to somebody, they're just going to say hello
if
back.
you tell you what, if you actually read the management instructions on looking at good welfare for train drivers and other safety critical staff, part of it is saying hello to them. And if they're normally jolly and they're jolly, that's fine. But if they're a bit reticent, maybe you should look at them, and vice versa. If it's a person that is normally quite dour and they're being overly active on the day, maybe you're considering whether med screen them or not. So I don't do these things. These people know absolutely nothing about railways.
Last one. Unions have resisted fitting sensors to trains that would check tracks for defects.
Lie.
Okay, that's
all
fairly
right.
clear.
Not even an urban legend. So let's look at it. In my time, I've dealt with more new fleets of trains than anybody else, I would imagine. And we've always recognised the ability that sending information back where brakes might be spongy or trains come out of service sooner for safety or other reasons is the right thing to do. And I sat down with Andrew Haynes just post-COVID with my president when they were talking about all the things they wanted to fit to trains to get more information on track and foliage and other things in future so we could have a better railway. And can you show me where we said no?
Okay. Well, thank you for that. That was very useful, and people will form their own views. Let's move on now briefly, if we may, to LNER. Okay. So the day after the big pay settlement deal, you then announced, I say at you, ASLEF, announced 22 days of strikes between now and the 10th of November, all at weekends on a railway, which we've just alluded to, actually, is becoming much more leisure-focused and leisure-reliant. I mean, you can't have been very popular in the Secretary of State's office on the Friday morning when that hit the press, given that she was out briefing how industrial relations on the railway had been reset the day before.
And in relation to pay, they had been. I mean, we've had some incredibly bad actors during the last 2 years. And there's a natural expectation when you're in dispute that people will run the odd train on a strike day for PR reasons or whatever else. And, you know, we take that with a pinch of salt. But in every company in which we operate, we agree who drive trains with the people who want people driving trains. And the only people that legislate to drive trains are train drivers. So in most companies, we have a standard arrangement because you decided that traction inspectors couldn't be an ASLEF anymore at privatisation. They were going to be managers and come under the remit of a different trade union in a different role because their role was administrative. So a driver manager can drive a train to keep his own competence. That's fair. How can you assess us if you can't drive a train yourself?
Yeah.
A real operating emergency, when it's all hands to the pump, we need to clear the railway. Anybody with the competency can drive a train, and you've seen how we have done that at times, major perturbation, and when the railway's been threatened, and we wouldn't move away from that. And if you're assessing somebody and they're that bad that they're a danger to the travelling public and the train that's been driven, you can drive that train to get it out of service. We've got one company who have been at the centre of being deceitful, disingenuous, dishonest, and other words I probably can't use in your podcast, right? LNER, since the start of this, whereby not only were they paying their driver managers £500 to drive trains on strike days, they've been paying them £500 a day on non-strike days. And at the same time, choosing and openly smashing every agreement we've got. So these managers are walking in and picking what turns they want to do in the front, breaking every rostering agreement we've got, every arrangement we've got, and they've done that consistently for the last 24 months. And in the week in which we resolve the dispute on pay, because this was a separate dispute ongoing, as you know, throughout the piece, right, they decided to escalate it and make it even worse and left us with no place to go.
Oh, so something happened on that Thursday, Friday, which caused an escalation.
Yeah, we had a number of reports. It was our board week, whereby they were, rather than trying to temper things down and come back to normal working, they were continuing what they were doing and actually making it worse in some areas.
But the press release you put out, if you don't mind me sort of pushing a little bit, this is what I think it's Nigel Roebuck, who's the full-time official there, isn't he? Said these managers who were on strike days scabbing were paid a bounty of £500 per shift if it was their rest day, exactly as you've just said. But I mean, bounty, scabbing. I mean, even those sympathetic to ASLEF probably would have thought, oh, that's kind of language we sort of left behind. I mean, do you think on reflection that was language that was helpful in trying to resolve this? And there's a lot of emotion.
Well, hold on. These people have never tried to resolve this in the whole 24 months. Even now, they're making no efforts to ameliorate where we are. They're trying to make it worse. We've reported these people because none of our people have had any on-call people in place for nearly 2 years. People who've had tragedies and fatalities on the railway haven't seen a driver manager for 4 days because they're too busy driving trains on top of the shifts that they're doing. We've reported this to the ORR and other people. You know, our real life experience for our people is that anybody with any medical, mental health problems, any issues with the railway, won't go to their local manager, won't go to their senior manager, will never trust one of these directors ever again. That's how bad it is on the ground. So when we use that words in the press release, that was us tempering our feelings, not extemporising how bad it really is.
So LNER isn't a private company, of course. It's fully nationalised. It's part of the DfT's Operator of Last Resort Holdings Limited, DOHL, snappy title. That's got a board of some experienced people. It's got a chief executive in Robin Gisby. He's been around the railway a long time. Have you spoken with Robin and sort of tried to resolve this? Because must be David Horn's boss, I guess. Has there been any dialogue with DOHL?
We've had no direct interaction with the DOR or the Operator Last Resort is now called in the whole time it's been in existence. The only thing that we get is when somebody fails and hands the keys back, we get the information at 7 o'clock in the morning, so we can't sell all our shares on the markets, that it's been taken back, and then they'll be putting people in temporarily in place until it's refranchised again. Bear in mind, the whole role of the OLR was because we weren't allowed to run our own trains under the 1993 Railways Act. They were a holding company until it was refranchised or let again.
No, I understand that.
And until now, that's been their position. Now that we have a different government, of course, there'll be a different ethos. And if the two bills go through Parliament to revoke the 93 Act and to enact Great British Railways, they may have a different role in future. But they're not the nationalised railway. They are the body that holds the railways or the former privateers that have failed in loco parentis.
Okay. It's difficult to see how this dispute gets resolved, though, isn't it, with LNER? How do you now see it getting resolved? Or are you basically saying to, I suppose, to the Secretary of State, really, you're going to have to step in and sort this one out? And if we do that, is that now the role of the government ministers and the DfT now? Every time there's a dispute, they have to resolve it. How do you see that working?
No, I don't. I mean, look, my ambition and hope was that we resolved the pay deal, and as we resolved the pay deal, people would come and talk to us about the issues that we had in one or two other companies over and above the pay deal themselves that are subject to separate disputes. I want to make this quite clear. This dispute on LNER has been going on for well over a year as well. It's not a new dispute, it's an existing dispute, and we have taken separate action in relation to this dispute during the period of the pay disputes, as people well know. Now, but zero effort has been made with my officer or my representatives at company council level to make the dispute or resolve the dispute or make it any better, ameliorate it in any way. And then at the same time, people seem to be digging their heels in to make it worse. And unfortunately for us, what do? We're trying to explain to our members in LNER, look, we've done you a pay deal, please accept it. Things are going to get better, when they can visibly see on the ground that they're not, and that the other dispute hasn't been resolved. It takes two to resolve it. I actually don't want Secretary of State to resolve this. I don't want the people currently in charge of rail. I actually want the company to sit down in good faith and resolve this. And maybe admitting their faults and what they've done outside of our agreements will be the first stage of doing so.
Okay. So very final question. So looking then to the future, I think you've kind of touched on it a bit there, Mick, but how do you see the key relationships being established for industrial relation matters? I mean, we all want GBR set up. Is that where you see this sort of stuff getting resolved in the future, and back arguably where it belongs, which is with professional railway people, or do you see another model?
No, I see professional railway people. I grew up in BR without having any rose-tinted glance about BR. There were geniuses there who worked on the shoestring and delivered amazing things. But what we need to do over the period of time it takes to create GBR is sit down and now create a new mechanism about how we're going to negotiate, who's going to meet with who, at what level, what are they going to do. But also, if I might briefly come back to one of your questions, what I didn't ignore, but I didn't quite answer, is when you asked about T's and C's and what going forward, as we go into some sort of levelling up or standardisation process, we actually get all those economies of scale back. We get all those synergies back where an Avanti driver, if they've got the knowledge and the route knowledge, can drive any train on any route that they sign and anywhere else. That's where the advantages come back in a vertically integrated and hopefully publicly safe railway.
Well, you're right. You didn't answer it earlier, but I'm very grateful that you came back to that. Look, as ever, always great to talk, Mick. Thank you so much. The big interview that Nigel and I did with you earlier in the year is still one of the most popular ones we ever did. Because even if people didn't agree with you, or many did and many didn't, everybody did find it insightful and interesting. So we were really grateful for that. Thanks for being so direct and clear again. And you're always welcome. So, Mick, many thanks indeed.
Thank you very much indeed.
So there we go. There was interview with Mick. I mean, I've got some views. What's your initial reaction to that? And we'll tell you also a bit about what LNER have said as well in a moment.
It's very mixed. I always have an empathy and sympathy and support for train drivers because they do an incredibly responsible job. It's got a lot of stress. It's uber safety critical. But the optics here are appalling. At a time,
what do you mean the fact that they announced this on the day after they done the big deal?
Oh gosh, yes. I mean, I dread to think what Lou Haig, how she reacted when she heard this. At the time, she was saying, we've got a solution, and then ASLEF a straight back. It wasn't good, but in the wider sense, at a time when pensioners earning more than I think it's £218 a week are losing their winter fuel allowance. For a bunch of workers reputedly earning an average of £60,000 a year using sheer muscle to get that up to around £70,000 a year, and it doesn't matter if the numbers aren't quite right, that's how people see it, and those optics are dreadful. You've probably had this, Richard, but friends and family who you bump into and talk to, they've all been bending my ear this week about train drivers. Will they never be satisfied? It's about time we automated driving, which you can't do anyway. We'll talk about that at another time. But that was just awful optics. And again, to reiterate what we've said before, the path to a boring, reliable railway is still some way away, isn't it?
It does feel that way. I mean, we did ask LNER if they'd like to come on the show. There's always two sides to any argument or any dispute, and we believe in absolute balance in everything. LNER said at this point they wouldn't be able to, but they were really helpful, very kindly gave us this statement. I'm just going to read it because I don't want to misquote them. LNER said, our priority focus will be on minimising disruption to customers during the forthcoming ASLEF strikes, the LNER ones, which sadly will continue to cause disruption and delays. We are surprised and disappointed to hear this news following recent constructive conversations. We will continue to work with ASLEF to find a way to end this long-running dispute, which only damages the rail industry. So that's what LNER said, and we've said to them, and we will continue to say to them, and to any other train operator, if you want to come on Green Signals and talk about it, you're always incredibly welcome, and certainly in LNER's case. I thought that was quite a statesmanlike comment.
It is.
And obviously just trying to, just calm things down a bit and see if they can find a way through. Yeah.
And setting aside the emotion, which there is clearly a lot of, I think the single most damaging aspect to this is that public ownership of train operating companies is the government's solution to what it perceives to be the big problem. And here we are with the biggest and most successful of the publicly owned train operating companies having its drivers walk out on strike the day after they... So again, the optics of that are awful.
It's not great.
And the fact that it's such a big operator, the impact goes from King's Cross to Aberdeen, which I'm sure ASLEF are absolutely well aware of. And it just looks and feels awful and continues to damage rail's reputation.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably worth just talking about the big settlement, the one that you said you'd had your ear bent over a bit, because I've had sort of similar comments about the pay dispute. And I suppose I've
like... Well, they've had a pay rise 4 years, haven't they?
Well, and, and I thought, Mick was actually, he was perfectly rational in what he said in that discussion. I mean, I do have a lot of sympathy with Louise Haigh and with Peter Hendy and with Alex Hines at the DFT, because they must go, you can't do right for doing wrong sometimes. I mean, just think about this. This is a sub-inflation deal, right?
It's not an inflation busting deal, as a lot of people, as the Daily Mail would insist.
No, now you could argue, but we started from a very, very high base. That's a different point.
But if you work it all out, it's not an inflation.
No, it's not. And the one thing it has done, it's removed any issue now. I mean, the railway industry now has got no excuse but not to perform and deliver, right? Because one of the biggest issues has now been resolved. So from that point of view, and, it's not I just don't think it's my job to kind of talk about sort of taxation and funding these things at a national level. We care about the railway, right? And from a railway point of view, they've kind of cleared the decks. And I think I understand why they did it. And I think it was probably the right thing to do. But oh my goodness, I mean, the temperature in Louise Haigh's office on that Friday morning
must have been white hot.
Well, I was going to say icy cold, but I know what you mean. I mean, timing, guys, timing, and you're right, the optics is really poor. I think on the LNER thing, it's quite interesting, right? There's clearly a lot of emotion. You heard that. But I think hopefully now, everybody's sort of vented a bit. They will sit down and find a way through. It is a completely separate dispute to pay. It's a different.
But that's not how people see it.
No, but that doesn't stop it being a separate dispute.
No, it doesn't. So but optics matter a lot.
I understand that, but now they just need to sit down and have the most sensible conversation they can have, because there's more days strike planned on LNER between now and November than the major pay dispute. And on a leisure railway, that's really bad. So this does need to get fixed. And that's an obvious statement. I'm sure they're working on it, but let's hope they will now.
Underneath it all, I suspect, and this is just a hunch, that what this is really about is how good LNER have been at using driver managers to keep a skeleton service going on strike days, thereby mitigating the impact of a strike.
Well,
I think ASLEF will, well, of course they won't like that. And I just wonder if that isn't the real, what they've really got to, if forgive the expression, to burr up their ass about.
Well, possibly. I think really when you boil it down, it's two groups of people having a fundamentally a major difference of opinion over something, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that only gets fixed by those two groups of people sitting in a room and going, the one thing that we can't allow to suffer here is the railway, our customers, because ultimately that's going to bite us. So let's get it sorted, and hopefully they will.
So,
fingers crossed.
We shall be coming back to this. Shall we move on?
We shall.
Right, this week's Railway News Roundup. I was going to do a drum roll then again, Richard, but I'm resisting the temptation. 3 HS2 construction updates this week. A bridge has been completed, which will carry the line under the A452 Kenilworth Road near Balsall Common. Have I said that correctly?
I don't know, but
I'm sure we'll be told.
Somebody will say, I think you'll find, right?
Yeah. In the West Midlands, the colossal bridge is 185 metres long, 19.5 metres wide and 13.9 metres high.
I don't like that bit.
Well, you have to shut your eyes as you go. Man, you don't want to shut your eyes. The rest of the line's in tunnels. So work will now begin on the embankments and landscape of the surrounding area. Meanwhile, a new 84-metre bridge has been moved into place at Aston Church Road in Birmingham. 2 128-wheeled self-propelled transporters, that sounds big, doesn't it?
It's huge.
Were used to move the 1,600-ton bridge into place, taking 5 hours. Real respect to those guys. We say it with all these numbers, but it must be bloody difficult.
Yeah.
And a 3,700-ton viaduct deck has been carefully slid almost half a kilometre uphill into position near Wendover in Buckinghamshire. It stretches 450 metres and was assembled in 3 stages over a period of 8 months. Wendover Dean Viaduct is one of 50 major viaducts on HS2. I mean, that's one of the things we kind of lost sight of in all the talk about HS2, the sheer physical civil engineering achievement. They're huge
extraordinary numbers. They are absolutely extraordinary numbers. So
maybe we ought to send you out on a jolly to video
well,
them.
Funnily enough, I was
speaking.
I was invited to go to a couple of these events and see them, and on behalf of Green Signals.
Of course.
Yeah, right.
You notice I didn't get the invitation because they know you do the jollies.
Well, I also, I can use the camera, but never mind. We won't go there. No, I couldn't do it because of family stuff, but there'll be more stuff to come on HS2 and we'll report on that. Here's an interesting one.
Yes.
Chiltern Railways. Okay. So they have discontinued a procurement process to supply a fleet of battery electric multiple units. Now, this one goes back almost 2 years. It's September 2022 they started this process, and it was actually stopped on August the 13th. Now, why? So Rail Business UK have reported the decision was taken because of, wait for it, changes to the DfT process for making the case for new trains, and because technical requirements have changed on the route. Well, okay, they've changed, but a process, I mean, that's interesting. Apparently, Chiltern has now got a better understanding of the difficulties of assessing the electrical supply on the route. I'm not quite sure what that really means. Anyway, there's going to be a new proposal. There's going to be a new call for bids, which the DfT will issue soon with the new requirements. Fine, but it's 2 years.
The DfT have spiked it, haven't they?
I don't know, but it's more cost. I don't think people realise what the cost is of these things, but there you go. Anyway, so new bid coming soon.
A couple of years ago, Chiltern supplied, I think, a prototype of one of those for the rail shuttle to Honeybourne for Rail Live.
Right.
And it was all very upbeat, and this is the future. And
there you go.
And here we go. Right. This one really is good news. Alstom Derby has won a contract to refurb all 312 interiors of CrossCountry's Voyager and Super Voyager carriages. Not before time, some would say. New seats, new floors, power sockets, tables, and a new livery is to be applied by McCann Birmingham and DG8, also in Derby.
Yeah.
I wonder if the seats will line up with the windows.
I'm sure they will. I mean, it's a big contract, that. It's 60 million quid, which is terrific. And of course, it's good again for Derby. So they got the TfL deal, they've got this now, so that's great news for them.
But farewell to your Virgin branded interiors.
I think, as you said, probably not before time. Really, they've probably reached the end of their life, and some would say that was a few years ago. Anyway, £33 million project is underway to tackle landslips on the East Coast Main Line. Hundreds of engineers been working since September 23 to stabilise a kilometre of railway at Brownie Curve near Durham. It's built on top of an embankment. The land's been moving slowly, so the project's going to stop that, and they're actually doing really well. The plan is to finish it before the weather arrives in the autumn. But again, just huge numbers. So well done them.
And we're going to have more of that because many Victorian earthworks weren't that well built
No.
and putting up with traffic and weight and speed that
Indeed
we never envisaged. Bizarre news story of the week time. Network Rail has unveiled the country's worst trespassing animals. Top of the list, deer. With 350 incidents, animals trespassed 1,432 times on the railway in the last year, ranging from deer to bees. Yes, really. 177 incidents of sheep, 172 birds, 143 swans, and 146 cows. The list got, somebody's actually counted these things. But topping the list, and the real reasons for the stats being released, of course, is to highlight that people are the worst offenders of the lot, with over 19,300 incidents of trespass in the last year. That's one every half hour.
It's extraordinary, isn't it?
And that's the news roundup for this week. If you'd like to send us any snippets or even big bits of news that you're aware of that you think we might not be and would like to share them, drop us an email at news@greensignals.org. We can't promise to read them all out, but the best ones we will, and we'll always name check whoever sends a good one that we read out. So,
at the risk, no, of being accused of yet another jolly, I need to tell you about a little trip that I have done in the last week.
Go on.
I went to the Isle of Wight, which you said you'd never been to.
I haven't.
Right, and somebody did put on YouTube, that's extraordinary. How can somebody as well-travelled as Nigel Harris not have been to the Isle of Wight? So I think you've got to go and...
You're right.
Get yourself
It's I mean, there's some famous... I mean, it was 2018 before I found my way to the Festinio, but I've never been away since.
Oh, well, there you go.
Know, but
anyway, there was actually a reason for going to the Isle of Wight. Viewers will remember, listeners will remember that a few weeks ago we talked about the work that was going on there and the work at Ryde Pier. And Network Rail and South Western Railway said, tell you what, come and have a look at what we're doing at Ryde. So I did. I took my daughter, Lucy, on an excuse of childcare. Actually, she had a great time.
So was she abandoned on Ryde Promenade for candy floss and ice cream?
Pretty much, but
I'm sure she had a great day.
She had a great day. We had a great time together, but I did see something really interesting. I took a little video, and here it is. I recently travelled to the Isle of Wight, together with Lucy, my 13-year-old daughter. Lying just off the south coast of England and separated from the mainland by the Solent, the Isle of Wight has a number of claims to fame, including, for instance, it is apparently the sunniest place in the UK with around 1,800 to 2,000 hours per year. Lucy and I caught the Wight Link fast boat from Portsmouth Harbour to Ryde Pier, where I was due to spend a bit of time with South Western Railway and Network Rail. After arriving at Ryde Pier station, where the trains meet the boats coming over from the mainland, I spoke first with Neil Drury, Engineering and Infrastructure Director at South Western Railway, about what is planned during the coming weeks and months. Neil, we're here at Ryde Pier. Just give us sort of an overview of what you've got planned.
So between 6th of September and 6th of October, we've got the whole of the island line shut down to undertake a significant scope of work. Largely speaking, or broadly speaking, that is track work, signalling renewals, bridge work and bridge renewals, and some drainage work as well. And that's over that 4 or 5 week period. Coupled to that, we've got the pier that's behind us, shut down for a significant period of time from the 6th of September through to May next year. And that's phase 2 of the works that was started a couple of years ago to make sure that the structure of the pier is fit for the next few decades and that we don't have to go back and undertake the work there. You'll imagine with it being in the sea environment, the corrosion's quite high on the pier.
It's interesting what you said about phase 2, right? Because the line was closed for quite an extended period
It
of
was,
time.
yeah.
Was the original intention to do everything in one go and have just a phase? At what point did we end up with phase 1 and phase 2?
That's a great question, and the answer is yes. The answer is absolutely we were going to do it in one phase. What happened was very early on in that programme, we found that there were two things that affected the ability to deliver that in one go, or at least in the time frame that we wanted to deliver it in. One was the level of corrosion on the structure of the pier was far more extreme than anyone was expecting. And you'll appreciate that you, as with all structures, until you actually start taking it to pieces and understand what the substructure looks like, you really are only taking an educated guess based on studies and inspections that have been undertaken from the outside and the accessible parts. So it was worse than expected, which obviously elongates the programme. And the other one is just the weather that we see here. And during that period of time, we had some fairly significant storms and also some fairly significant high tides. And I don't know if you appreciate, but when the tide is high, it laps over the top of the pier here. So to undertake any work whilst you've got those high tides isn't possible. So we've learned those lessons and we'll apply them to what we're calling phase 2 now and make sure that we undertake the work through that process in that period of time. We're confident that we will do that. And the reason that we didn't do it all in one and extend that programme is that we took a very conscious decision during that first phase to stop the work and open the railway again for the tourism industry on the island to make sure that we didn't affect the island during that peak season and then come back during off season to finish off the work.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. But just talk a bit then about the work that's planned on this. Let's just a bit about the train service itself. So you've got the Class 484 unit here. A lot of work and a lot of expense in that. They've not had the easiest of starts, have they either? So just sort of talk us through that, I suppose, the train story over the last few years.
So absolutely. I mean, they are an absolute blessing and godsend to this railway. The 483s that came before them were really difficult to continue to maintain and overhaul.
Right.
The supply base, as you imagine, with four trains down to one train in the end, because we were having to rob parts off of each of the trains as we ran out of parts. The supply base wasn't able to continue to supply, and it was absolutely the right timing to replace those trains. So whilst, we had to invest in not new trains, but refurbished destock, they were absolutely the right thing to do to make the future of the railway sustainable. I mean, the 483s were never going to get there. From a train startup point of view, my natural response is all new trains projects have difficult starts and lots of technical issues. Obviously, this one was coupled with the train manufacturer going into administration relatively early on in that deployment phase, and us having to pick that design authority and technical authority piece up and learn about the trains, have to then deliver everything that wasn't delivered that was going to be delivered, and have to learn through that process. And one of the great examples is when we specified these trains. New traction equipment on them was supposed to have rheostatic braking, so electric braking, was never instated. The traction equipment was never tested for that, and therefore we were using friction brakes all the time. And one of the issues that we've had over this year is significant wheel wear, which that contributed to. We were never expecting to have friction braking as often as we are. So we've done a significant amount of work with modifying all of the traction equipment and electronics and finishing off the work that the manufacturer didn't finish off before they went into administration.
I next spoke with George Murrell, Wessex Route Renewals Director for Network Rail, about some of the technical challenges and opportunities with respect of the work on the pier itself.
George, we're here stood on Ryde Pier. We've got the sort of sea lapping around us, and it's so clear to see why there are challenges. You know, the supports for the railway are all encrusted with, barnacles and stuff. Just give us a sense of the challenge of maintaining a structure like this and why this extra work is now required.
So this structure is over 150 years old. 1814, I believe, is when the sort of first part of the structure was built, and actually built in 6 different zones. And in fact, all the sort of the zones were built slightly differently. So we've had to really sort of tailor our approach to suit that. So it's a very complex structure. We spent months in the planning phase to work out exactly how we were going to renew the critical components here. But we've had the fortunate sort of opportunity to work here before. So we worked here over the last couple of years, and actually made some mistakes. But we've really learned from those and sort of taken those lessons on how we work, what we do, the approach we take to really make sure that we can deliver the work that we plan to deliver successfully come September, to make sure that we do hand back the railway infrastructure on time and deliver the outputs that we need.
What is the challenge here from an engineering point of view? Is it sort of seawater corrosion? Is it something else? What engineering issues are you facing here?
So it's the deterioration of the steel, and it's obviously the deterioration of that from a structural perspective, but also from a track perspective. The timber sleepers that are on here as well, they are again very life expired. And the great thing about that actually is we're going to be changing the timber sleepers to composite sleepers. So a mixture of sort of plastic and glass, reinforced glass, and they've got a lifespan of a minimum of 60 years. But working on the structure, we're very restricted in terms of the space that we have. Effectively, we're going to have to work on the single line section of it. So every sort of activity we do, it's in a very linear sort of form. So it's one activity at a time. There's a whole load of restrictions in terms of logistics, getting our materials to site, allow people to work around the structure. Obviously, when we're planning to deliver the work, we're working through the winter. So of course, we've got all the environmental and weather constraints that are working against us as well. And that's something that we've built into the plan to make sure that we don't struggle and actually fail to achieve our targets throughout the 9-month closure. We have contingency in case the weather is so bad that we have to stop for a day or two. So we really built that and thought about the programme this time round to make sure that we do succeed.
So you mentioned there about the sleepers and using composites and having a very extensive life. But in terms of the core work, what are we looking at? 20 years, 30 years, 50 years?
So sort of anywhere between 25 to 50 years, which I know is a very broad brush duration, but certainly the materials we're using are very hard wearing. We're going to be treating the steel, painting the steel. So the new steel that's installed, we'll be painting that to make sure that lasts up to the conditions that we face for some time, particularly through the winter. But also the structure that's here now, a lot of it's salvageable. So what we do plan to do is sort of blast it clean and save the stuff that's still absolutely fine, but just really make sure we treat it to give it that long-lasting life that it still has.
Fantastic. Well, the wind is really picking up, and you suddenly realise you're stood in the middle of the sea, so that tells you what the challenges are. So listen, thanks very much and good luck with the works, and let's look forward to a new railway next year.
Thank you very much.
Back to Neil Drury. I asked him whether passengers could now look forward to a period of reliable operation once the works are complete, and then perhaps rather more controversially, whether such a short branch line with so many challenges and one-off costs to operate was really justified anymore.
It's really just a relatively short branch line, I suppose. It doesn't go to Cowes, it doesn't go to Newport, it doesn't go to Yarmouth, so it's very, very specific. Is it really worth all this investment to carry on running this, or is it kind of now time to go, do you know what, this just doesn't really make sense?
That's a great question, and unsurprisingly, it's on everyone's minds, and we get asked on a regular basis. I mean, from our point of view, we are required to continue to run the railway and continue to invest in it, and we are doing just that to make it as successful as possible. From an island point of view, I know that from the communities that we serve, from the tourism industry that it serves, and indeed from our stakeholders like ferries and hovers, to connect into something that then goes onward into the island is also really important as well. So from a local point of view, it is really, really important. The bigger question as to whether it's worthwhile or not is one for others to
That's a very diplomatic but very fair answer. So I suppose just sort of pulling this all together then, once you've done this work, once Network Rail have done the work on the pier, once the timetables back in full swing, and can people on the island and those who visit it look forward to as trouble-free, as reliable as service for how long? 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Will this work really do what's needed?
That's certainly the aim. From my point of view, I'm confident that it will. I can't say that we won't have more possessions and closures. You'll appreciate on the main line, it happens all the time because we're required to go in and do work. But in terms of the big work, the big ticket items, we've tried our best to do them now, do it whilst it's closed for a significant period of time so that we don't have to have that intrusive work going forwards. From a rolling stock point of view, absolutely. Indeed, we are trialling next week 4-car operation, so 2 trains coupled together, which was always the desire during high peak season. All of the mods that we've done means that we have to retest that now to make sure it'll work. Assuming that it does, we'll get that going as well. So again, next year, high peak season from May onwards, absolutely hopeful and confident that it will be a high reliable railway.
Brilliant, Neil. Thanks, and good luck with the closure. But more importantly, good luck with them when it reopens after the work.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
After a bite of lunch, Lucy and I watched the trains trundling over the pier for a bit, and then we headed back to Portsmouth on the boat. I've no doubt that the railway will operate far more reliably once these latest works are complete, but as to whether it makes economic sense, I suspect that's a question that no one really wants to answer.
So what do you think of that then?
It was. It is about time I went to the Isle of Wight, isn't it? The fact I didn't go when the old trains were running is a source of irritation to me now, but that's my own fault. But everybody who goes says it's a wonderful place.
It is. It's lovely.
And you and Lucy clearly had a wonderful time.
We had a great time.
I saw she played a starring role as an extra or walk-on here and there in that video.
She hasn't seen that yet. So anyway, there you go. No, it was good, and it was amazing to see what they're doing. It's a remarkable piece of infrastructure. I thought when I asked the question about is this all worthwhile with the Island Line, I thought he answered that very diplomatic.
Carefully, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Wouldn't expect anything else. I'm hoping to have another conversation with Neil Drury, actually. He's got some really interesting ideas around discontinuous electrification on the line to Exeter. That could be really interesting.
Okay.
And I also managed to have a chat with him about rolling stock procurement as well. We haven't had time to show that this week, but we'll show that in the future. It's really interesting stuff. So there you go, the Isle of Wight.
Maybe we should get Steph to produce us a graphic screen for Richard's Jollies.
We could do that. Anyway, but what we could do instead is move on to the quiz.
And give us all a laugh. Go on.
Charming. Thank you very much. Right. Last week's question. Bit of a head scratcher.
Really? Head scratcher?
Well, I can't win. So some people say, oh, it's too easy. And then some people say, oh, it's too difficult. So you can't get it right. Anyway, this one clearly was quite difficult because absolutely nobody got it right.
You won this week then?
I won. I get a mug. The question was, what's the railway connection between the numbers 44 and 61? There were some really quite clever attempts. Yeah, one guy said, and I'm terribly sorry, I cannot remember now who it was, and they'll be really cross, and I'll give you a shout out next week when I checked, said GWR Prairie tanks were class 4-4 and also 6-1, which I thought, that's very smart, but it wasn't the right answer. The right answer was actually there are 44 platforms at Grand Central Station in New York.
Which surprised me, I have to say.
It's the biggest station in the world in terms of the number of platforms, right? And track 61 at Grand Central is the famous, but not in use, track that goes under the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, which allegedly was used for the transportation of presidents. So that is the connection between 44 and 61.
And there's an interesting point there of difference of approach to railways, isn't there? Here we talk about platform 1.
Yeah.
And the Americans talk about the track.
Yeah.
Which actually, when you think about it, probably makes a bit more sense.
Yeah, what I haven't worked out is why if they got 44 platforms, they got track 61. But then it is not in use. So who knows? Somebody out there will know.
But I mean, that wonderful station at Grand Central, the bit you see above ground, it must sprawl underground
It was huge.
over
Huge.
a much greater footprint.
Yeah. Anyway, so no one got it right last week. So here's this week's quiz, and I think this one's a little bit easier, but I don't know, I shouldn't say that. So here's the question, right? The question is, who would I be train spotting with, and what trains would I be looking for if I walked from Ollie's Yard to Kilty Vale?
It's an anagram again, isn't it?
No?
Is it not?
Well, it might be.
Oh.
No, it's not. It's not. It's one of those, like, if you know, you know. And if you don't know, well, I don't know. Anyway, that's the question. So if you think you know the answer, drop us a line to quiz@greensignals.org by midday on Saturday, what will it be? The 24th, won't it? And put all the correct answers. And I'm fairly confident there will be some correct answers for this one. And then we'll draw one out at random.
And we shall look forward to that.
Indeed.
The quiz has really taken off, hasn't it?
It's amazing. I mean,
talk about engagement.
Yeah.
They love it.
Yeah. And people love getting the mugs. So there you go.
We'll be able to give them a choice soon when we get our travel mugs, won't we?
Well, when you've organised them, yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, some good news sent in to us now by Richard Kirbyshaw. He said, I'm sure you've seen that Stuart Boyd of Every Last Station fame has completed his Walking the Scenic Railways of Wales walk, easy for you to say, for the Samaritans, and thought it might be nice if you could give him a mention and maybe a link to his Just Giving page. Well, we thought that was a great idea, Richard. It's a great cause and a commendable feat by Stuart, so well done, Stuart. He walked from Holyhead to Pembroke Dock, walking 430 miles along the scenic railways of Wales. He's aiming to raise £15,000 for the Samaritans and has already reached more than £10,000. So come on, green signallers, let's help him along to get that last 5,000 if we can. We'll put the link on our additional resources page on the website for anyone who would like to donate. So please do. Great call.
Brilliant. That's fantastic.
People do the most amazing things, don't they?
Yeah, superb.
And sadly, that's all we've got time for this week from my garden. It's been rather...
In front of your pub.
In front of my own pub. I know, it's been rather novel recording the show together in the same room for once. We must do it more often. And thanks so much for... I noticed you didn't agree there, Richard. Thanks so much.
No, because it's 3 hours 15 drive for me and about 80 feet for you.
Well, I might be prepared to drive mine to Steph as well. So, yeah, you're going to have to.
Yeah, okay, right, fair enough, yeah.
So thanks so much for watching or listening as usual. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up or leave a comment. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel on YouTube. It really does help. Doesn't cost you anything. Just click the button. And do join us again next week when we'll be back with more exciting video packages entitled Richard's Jollies to share with you once again. Till then, it's goodbye from me and
once you've also gone and checked out the membership and signed up for that as well, it's goodbye from me.
Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next week.